It's Saturday, and you know what that means. It's time for China Now, your go-to source for authoritative news and in-depth discussions on China and its global impact. I am Makiza Latifa, and as always, I am thrilled to be here with you. Let's dive right in with China Current, where Lisa has a lineup of key stories for us. Today, she'll be covering how the fall of the USAID could benefit China and the world at large. A fascinating report on Chinese police outmatching their US counterparts in Dubai, and much more. Stay with us for all the details.
China Current is a weekly news talk show from China to the world. We cover viral news about China every week and also give you the newest updates on China's cutting-edge technologies. Let's get started.
Welcome to China Currents, your weekly news report on the latest development in China. I'm Lisa. In this episode, how will USAID's fall benefit China and the world? Chinese police defeated US cops in Dubai. A gala showcased the future of China's manufacturing. First, let's dive into Trump's big move. According to a report on the 6th of February, Trump plans to cut the number of employees at the U.S. International Development Agency, USAID, from over 10,000 to fewer than 300. Western media view this as a retaliatory move against the Democratic Party, arguing that it will lead to many developing countries losing vital food and medical aid. However, Chinese strategist Professor Wang suggested that this development may not be detrimental to developing countries, particularly China. Instead, he sees it as a sign of the US moving away from its long-standing global dominance, which could actually benefit the global south. To understand this trend, we can focus on two main points. First, the reduction of USAID indicates that the US machinery of creating chaos around the world has fallen into brain death. US global dominance relies on two pillars: military power and cultural warfare. The military aspect is clear, but the cultural warfare is where USAID plays a significant role. While the USAID is often seen as an international aid organization, it actually functions as a tool for the US to protect its interests and maintain its dominance without using military force. After the US military established a presence in the region, it needs a low-cost method to maintain control. This involves weakening local resistance and anti-war sentiment. USAID act as a remote control, often through funding and influencing foreign media. For example, in 2023, Reporters Without Borders (RSF) reported that USAID funded over 6,200 journalists and 707 media outlets across 30 countries, as well as 279 media-focused NGOs. In Ukraine, USAID was the primary sponsor of many independent media outlets, with 90% of them relying on foreign subsidies to operate. The strategy was clearly seen during the 2014 coup in Ukraine, where the manipulation of public opinion by various independent media funded by outside forces helped lead to the removal of the democratically elected President Yanukovych. If USAID had been shut down a decade earlier, this conflict in Ukraine might not have occurred. It's even possible that the global COVID-19 pandemic could have been avoided. On the 3rd of February, Musk revealed that USAID had funded research into biological weapons, including gain-of-function studies on the virus, which contributed to the deaths of 7 million people worldwide. If USAID's record hadn't been exposed, the rumors surrounding the Wuhan virus would have smeared China much more. Furthermore, more man-made viruses could have continued to threaten the world. Now, on to the second point. Ending USAID will make all sovereign states great again. Trump simultaneously announced a 90-day suspension of all foreign aid. The New York Times reported that this decision could make an already fragile ceasefire more fragile, noting that during the Gaza war, USAID provided over $1 billion in assistance to Gaza and the West Bank, helping tens of thousands of Palestinian refugees with food supplies. However, a closer look reveals the hypocrisy in the New York Times stance. According to Brown University, in 2024, the US provided $17.9 billion in military aid to Israel, over 10 times the amount given for Palestinian refugee aid. Trump even suggested that US could claim ownership of Gaza. Even more alarming is that the food aid itself has been linked to plans for biological warfare. In November 2021, USAID announced it would donate 3,000 tons of wheat seeds to Syria, claiming that the goal was to ensure bread for everyone. However, when Syrian agriculture officials examined the seeds, they found that 40% were infected with a parasite called nematode. They warned farmers to destroy the seed or risk damaging their land's agricultural value for years. In December 2024, Bashar al-Assad, the former president of Syria, was forced to resign. Assad's government had long subsidized a type of flatbread, which cost only 400 Syrian pounds for 12 pieces. That's about 3 cents in USD. For Syrians living on just $2 a day, this flatbread was crucial for living. It was literally the bread for everyone. However, according to MEM, after Assad's resignation, bread prices in Damascus skyrocketed by 900%. On the 6th of January 2025, the US announced plans to ease sanctions against Syria and allow human aid to enter the country. It's important to note that the previous Syrian government still managed to feed the population, even though much of the agriculture production was controlled by the Kurds, and also this was against the backdrop of the US using sanctions to damage Syrian agriculture. However, after the US relaxed sanctions and allowed aid, many Syrians began to starve. Similar situations in Afghanistan and Venezuela show that it's not foreign aid that guarantees food security, but rather a stable government that effectively serves its people. This highlights how USAID has contributed to starvation in developing countries. If USAID hadn't been so involved in promoting revolutions and biological warfare, the people in these nations could have survived with dignity. Ironically, the US so-called charitable aid has often turned them into beggars of the free world. So while Trump's decision to shut down USAID may have been driven by political motives and a desire to scale back, it also weakens the backbone of US global dominance. When the propaganda machine stops, people in developing countries may finally see that their true saviors are themselves. And this realization will help those in the global south to regain confidence and collectively work towards a multipolar world order. For the US, the saving of these cuts won't be enough to stop its decline, but they do show that the Trump administration understands the challenges of maintaining global hegemony. Strategically, moving away from this dominance might indeed be a smarter and more practical choice for the US today. Next up, let's see how Chinese police set a new world record. The UAE SWAT Challenge 2025 began on the 1st of February in Dubai. This intensive 5-day event brings together top law enforcement and military teams from around the world to showcase their skills in challenging tactical situations. This year, the competition set a new Guinness World Record, with a record-breaking of 105 teams with 46 countries participating. China sent 3 teams into this year's challenge. The team from Zhejiang province won the championship, while the Anhui province team took home the bronze medal. The Chinese team competed in 5 demanding events, including rapid assault tactics, firepower strikes, officer rescue mission, tower operation, and extreme obstacle courses. After making their debut in last year's competition, the Zhejiang SWAT team set a world record in this year's tower assault event, completing it in an impressive 2 minutes and 33 seconds. The event stimulates real-world hostage rescue and counter-terrorism operations, challenging teams to swiftly breach and clear a multi-story building. The Zhejiang team consists of 9 members, with the oldest being 33 and the youngest 25. One member, Liu Pen, born in 1998, has been a police officer for 8 years. Since learning about the UAE SWAT Challenge last January, he dedicated 90% of his time to training. In China, the police are referred to as the People's Police. This is significant. According to Chinese official media, in 2023, reports of theft and robbery nationwide decreased by over 31% compared to 2019. During the same period, human trafficking cases dropped by 66%. Additionally, a total of 42,000 drug-related crimes were solved in 2023, marking a 74.5% decrease from previous highs. Also, despite an increase of 160 million motor vehicles and 112 million licensed drivers over the past 5 years, road traffic accidents in China have actually declined. Most importantly, Chinese are not afraid of the police because they truly serve the people. Next up, on the 28th of January, the 2025 Chinese Spring Festival Gala showcased a groundbreaking blend of tradition and technology. 16 unitary H1 humanoid robots dressed in traditional Chinese floral pattern jackets danced alongside professional performers. They executed a folk dance with impressive precision, even tossing and catching handkerchiefs in mid-air, which entertained viewers. This interesting performance was the result of 3 months of AI-powered training, precise coordination of 43 high-torque joints, and a 360-degree sensing system. Using deep learning, the robots analyze and mimic human dance moves, generating real-time commands that made their movements both powerful and precise. If these robots can toss a handkerchief, they can certainly handle other tasks, like turning a screw. Notably, while Tesla's Optimus robot cost up to $30,000 each, the unitary H1 is priced at around $14,000, making it a more affordable option for small businesses and developing countries. And that is all for today's China Currents. Thank you for watching this episode, and if you have any thoughts or comments about our show, please reach us at the email address below. We look forward to hearing from you and see you next time.
And that wraps up China Currents with Lisa. Thank you. Now let's turn our attention to Overlap, proudly brought to you by Wave Media. In this segment, we have a compelling discussion lined up between current affairs commentator Chris Young and Zimbabwean entrepreneur and newspaper publisher Trevor Cube. Stay with us for all the insights.
Welcome to Overlap, brought to you by Wave Media. My name is Chris. I'm an ex-journalist and a media content creator in China. Today, I'm really thrilled to be in conversation with Trevor Nkube, a veteran journalist and entrepreneur from the great nation of Zimbabwe. Welcome, Trevor.
Thank you so much, Chris. What a pleasure and a privilege to be with you. I look forward to our conversation, Chris. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
So I've did a little bit of homework about your past. So from what I understand is that you are from the western part of Zimbabwe, and you ran newspapers and other forms of media. You have been in this industry for a very long time, and it's a rather recent development that you have started your podcast, In Conversation with Trevor. A lot of Chinese internet users are not used to such long form videos. They like, Douyin, a Chinese TikTok.
Yeah,
They like to swipe across the screen. So people in my profession, they lament, these people, they are just mentally lazy. They just love entertainment. They don't really want to go after truth. They don't want to hear complete stories with different angles and nuances. It seems to me that we as content creators have yet to find a way. And I think I want to hear from you, as you have done very successfully with your channel.
But before I do that, I must ask you though, why did you decide to go independent and to do long form journalism? Why did you decide to do that?
The primary reason, I would say, is because I watch a lot of such content online. I see such long form videos, especially podcasts, are very, very popular in the West. Maybe not so popular in UK, but certainly in the United States. And my previous organization, Guancha, is a very political. We talk about international politics all day long, and we watch the rise of Donald Trump very closely. And when Donald Trump announced, when his campaign got successful, when he was elected, the person he thanked was Joe Rogan. So Joe Rogan,
yes,
the biggest podcaster, was a kingmaker in that election, that decisive election. So I thought, wow, such influence. he could reach out to so many people, and those people are genuinely having a good time on his show, watching his content, even though it's controversial from time to time. So I thought, why can't we just create such videos in China? We talk China, we have a lot of interesting people, so why can't we have such interesting conversations? So I wanted to try this, but it seems to me that we have yet to find the way to conduct this thing.
Well, why do you say that, Chris? I'm sorry, I'm going to push. Why do you say that you are still yet to find a way of doing it? What seems to be the problem for you?
Oh, the problem is, in China, the stereotypical time span for Chinese online content is from 15 minutes to 20 minutes. That's a typical Chinese long form video. And those kind of conversation I do, they easily run into 1 hour, 1.5 hours. And I was having a hard time struggling with how to edit the conversation because I think, oh, they are so wonderful, but you have to listen to this part. There's a way of ramping up to that fascinating part of the story. You have to listen from the beginning. But our viewers just they can't wait. And I
Yeah.
received a suggestion from Douyin, the Chinese TikTok. We work with them very closely, and they suggest to me, Chris, you need to put the best part in the first 2 seconds. The first 2 seconds. If you don't get their attention in the first 2 seconds, you're done. I was like, how to get people so interested in a person with just in 5 seconds? Okay, give me 5 seconds. I can't do that. I'm still struggling with that.
Yeah, I hear your pain, Chris, but I'll tell you where I come from. My thing, Chris, is like you. I love watching podcasts. I love watching long podcasts. I love reading books that take me into how somebody thinks, different ways of doing things. I love watching opera. I love watching a long conversation with Bill Gates and that kind of stuff. I love watching things to learn so that I grow. And like you, I want to think that there's a lot more people that like you and I who want to watch things so that they grow, so that they learn. And here is what I suspect we are at the risk of doing. Dumbing down our journalism to get a larger audience. But we need to ask ourselves why, which is why I asked you, Chris, why are you doing this? Okay. I think at the center of everything that we do is that why. Why are you doing this? And for me, that why, Chris, gets to answer the question, are we successful or are we not successful? You ask me now, am I successful? Absolutely. Do I want bigger numbers? Absolutely. Do I have big numbers? Not now, but I am very clear that history will prove you and I right. That the public, Chris, will begin to walk towards quality. The public will begin to walk towards long form. That the evidence out there, Chris, says the world is divided because we are consuming this fragmented content, which doesn't tell you the whole picture. We are consuming this 2.5 second content, which riles you, make you angry without knowing what the other 2 minutes were of the content. Therefore, the responsibility for you and I, Chris, is not so much to be swayed by the people that want the 2 seconds. Let TikTok and Douyin do whatever they're doing. But you and I, let's focus on content that is what I call stickability. This is content that people keep on coming back to. But Chris, we also have an opportunity. Let's use Douyin to get people to have a view into our content. So interestingly, Chris, we found that our small clips, the consumption of those clips is into millions. That's okay. I would want millions to watch an episode like this, but it's not happening. But guess what? each million that watches the TikTok clip, there's one or two people that come back to watch us. So
Yes.
I think it's important to ask ourselves, Chris,
Mm,
and to be very clear about what
mm,
is the why of what we're doing.
mm,
And if the why is accompanied by, we want to achieve long term goals, not just
mm,
short term goals of getting a million people. You get a 10 million people. Why? Why do you want 10 million people? I want to affect Zimbabweans and the continent in a positive way. Okay. And I understand that that's a piece of work that is heavy lifting. It's not going to be easy because you want to engage people, you want to inform people. Chris, you and I have a big responsibility. The world is divided. There's so
mm,
much toxicity. And that toxicity and the division, Chris, comes from the fact that we are the most, we are a society, you and I, that lives in an era where technology has flooded us, drowned us with information, but we are the least informed people that have ever walked this planet.
mm. Yeah, I completely agree. Um, Sometimes I do self-reflection over my past career. The way I see it, I think, let me just begin by a Francis Bacon quote, knowledge is power.
Yeah,
If you say knowledge is power, then getting to know stuff is gaining power. And
yeah,
certainly that will disrupt the pre-existing power hierarchy and power
yeah,
balance in a society. So those who are in the powerful positions, they will act, the elite class will act as gatekeepers to, to control information, basically.
yeah.
So the formation of knowledge is traditionally the profession of journalism is in the business of forming knowledge, informing people, right? You take raw material, which are the facts on the ground, you do some selection of facts, and also you process such information. And more often than not, this is my view, those people who are in the institutional media are swayed by political forces. So they will
Mm,
instill political biases in the narratives they create. So their analysis is not the reader's analysis. They're taking on things. It's not the reader's taking on things, but they present them as solid facts to people so that people skip the process, skip the step of thinking. They jump immediately to conclusion. So if they tell you, okay, China is bad, China is,
yeah,
let's
yeah,
say China is creating debt trap in Africa, and China is, taking over the world, the resources, and people will, okay, China is bad. They
yeah.
instead of just go to conduct investigation like investigative journalists do. So because, well, people, the way we observe our environment, we only live within a few blocks. We go to work, we
Yeah.
go home, we go to work, we go home. We don't know what's happening in the
No.
outside world. We rely very heavily on the kind of curated information we receive every day. So if we receive um, pieces of information from institutions with political agenda, though we are very subjected to biases and that kind of things. So I think traditional media is losing out in this regard, and I don't know whether you have uh, previously I mentioned the case of Trump, and also before Trump was elected, Washington Post, they made a decision not to endorse any of the two, Kamala Harris or Trump, both any of those two candidates. And they say it was the decision of Jeff Bezos, the owner of the newspaper. And the owner of the newspaper wrote an op-ed next day saying, the hard truth is Americans don't trust media. So the traditional institutional media completely lost public trust. Mm.
That is true because of agendas associated with these big media companies and so. But we must also put the onus on the reader. You ask in terms of are the readers discerning? in terms of what they're reading? Are they selective? What do they choose to read? Okay, and why are they reading? Or why are they listening to podcasts? Why are they listening to TikTok? What kind of world are we going to become if the reader is not discerning? If you recall that the fundamental principle of media was freedom of expression, the individual must express themselves. Stable societies, accountability, we are dependent and codependent on each other. We all need each other. But society throughout the world, Chris, is fragmenting. Your truth is no longer my truth. How can that be? How can that be? So I fear, Chris, that the issue that you and I are discussing right now is huge. And unfortunately, it is spinning out of control. Because everybody is now a publisher. Everybody now has a podcast. For me, as a Christian, there's a place in the Bible where, there's a Tower of Babel, where we are all talking but not understanding each other. I mean, so where is this going to end? Where you're talking to me, I'm not understanding you. You live in your own little ghetto, Chris. I live in my own little ghetto. I come from work, I go home. I've got my Facebook people, I've got my Dion people, and so forth. We have these clusters of people across social media who don't talk to each other, who don't know each other, who don't communicate.
Yeah, I can feel you. I definitely can feel you. I think you've raised a question, a very interesting question. Why do people need to read news? Why do people listen to podcasts?
Yeah.
To me, I think there is this psychological benefit that you think you are relevant, that you think you are connected to the world, even though you may be not, even though you may be very isolated in the basement. You're just scrolling computer screen, thinking that you understand what's happening remotely in Russia, and you're an armchair strategist telling people how to run big countries like China and America. In fact, you can never manage your own home. You don't even buy a grocery. That kind of thing happens. Yes, I think it's a world. The way I see it is that our division of labor is so thorough that we only need to excel or do in one aspect. You just do this and he just does that, and we combine our efforts. It's going to make the society run so that people are super absorbed into their own stuff, but they need to maintain this this idea that somehow they are connected. They are not out of touch with the reality, but in fact they are. So that they need to take in information and need to take in the kind of stories about how other people perceive you, so you can have a understanding of your mutual relation in a sense. So I feel this business is experiencing a very significant transformation. I have another very encouraging new phenomenon I observe in China nowadays. It could be very interesting to you, because America, the previous administration was going to ban TikTok, Biden administration. Yeah. So they say you have a deadline, which is January 19th. After that, we're going to ban TikTok. And American TikTok users are flooding into Chinese social media platforms. They call themselves TikTok refugees. They flooded into China, and they interact with Chinese internet users directly without going through any intermediaries telling you that Chinese people are living miserably, or telling you American people are living a superfluous life. They just check with each other the items. What do you buy? How much do you spend on food? How much do you spend on clothing? How much do you spend on traffic fares and travel fares and etc. Housing, etc., medical bills, education, so that people understand, have a broad, a vague, but more complete picture of each other's life. So you're not an abstract idea of Chinese coming, and they are not just the evil US imperialists. We are living people, living and breathing and trying to have happy life for ourselves. So in that way, people distance is reduced tremendously by technology, we'll have to adapt to this, I think, to this changing technological landscape. I think journalists in the past have this role of, public knowledge. You're in a way you're educating people to be in pursuit of truth, in pursuit of, truth, basically. But then suddenly you find yourself, okay, I may not know the truth. I'm also investigating the truth. And there are people out there on the internet who could be closer and get to the bottom faster than I could. So I'm not a teacher anymore. I
Yeah,
need to learn. So in the
yeah.
end, I'm just an average person on the internet. I don't
I
know.
think, Chris, you put your finger right onto it. Our responsibility, Chris, is so first of all, clearly, media, somebody's moved the cheese as far as media is concerned. And the game has changed big time. So for you and I to remain relevant, Chris, I want to posit that what we need to do is to be better informed than the public. Okay.
Mm.
So more experts, more qualified people, rather than commoditized news. I mean, commoditized news like somebody was run over by a car. There, you can't that will never be in a newspaper anymore because it's going to be on Twitter, it's going to be on TikTok. So I think the challenge, Chris, where we will remain relevant is, can we be the source for investigative journalism? Can we be the source for analysis,
Mm.
expert analysis on things like climate change, if we agree that there's climate change, law, for instance, technology, for instance, because not everybody's going to be an expert on what's the chip to buy from NVIDIA and that kind of stuff. So there's going to be, for me, more specialization within our industries. So generalists will fall away because everybody is a generalist. So more specialists in business, more specialists in how to deal with AI and the advantages of dealing with AI, the pros and cons and so forth. So I'm thinking that there will still be that place for long form, deep journalism that provides the expertise that answers the questions that the public has. Let that
Mhm.
long form, Chris, be informed. Let it be expert. When I'm saying expertise, not within the pejorative way of expertise. You're pushing a certain agenda, but just to be
Specialist.
impartial, present the facts to people to make up their minds. I think there was still going to be that point. We are so immersed, Chris, in this noise, in this hate, in this toxicity, in this division, that more and more of us are going to hunger for real information, which is researched. We will find people coming back to good journalism. We will
Mhm.
find societies and communities. We'll find people investing in local community titles that run a story about my school, where my child goes, and there's scores and that kind of stuff. It might be or on the internet or whatever. People will hunger for real news. People will hunger for fact check news. People will realize that spending so much time on WeChat, on WhatsApp, and that kind of stuff just floods you with gossip, which is not real stuff.
Yes, I wanted to go a little bit to, because you have said that media has played a tremendous role in shaping our understanding of our society, and also we ultimately will have to embrace our traditional values when it comes to make a decision of what we really need to know about the world. Um, so I want to ask you about general public in Zimbabwe and also by extension in South Africa. How do they get to know about China? And what do you think? Do you think they are getting sound information about
Mhm.
China, or do you think there needs to be improvement in the kind of sort of information gap that we need to bridge?
Oh yeah. So the answer to your question is that people don't know much about China. That's the general public. They don't know much about China. Language is one of the, I think, hindrances that get in the way of Zimbabweans and Africans getting to know more about China. Distance is another thing. The complex issues involved, another thing. So, to your question, there is need for China to up its game as far as communication is concerned. Whether it's a way of communicating in a language that the majority of the people understand, or it's a way of making media accessible in a way that people understand. But the bottom line is that people don't know much about China, that people rely on stereotypes about China. And those stereotypes, Chris, are informed by what people see, read, watch, what they experience in their neighborhoods. I don't know how traveled you are, Chris, but there are Chinese everywhere. In Zimbabwe, there's a lot of Chinese, and they are into all sorts of things. So sometimes people face-to-face interaction with Chinese forms their views of the Chinese. Sadly, there's a stereotype which is negative about the Chinese. And those stereotypes are that they are exploitative, they are cruel, they are corrupt, because they come in and do business with government ministers who are known or assumed to be corrupt. That any business that they deal with, that they're engaged in, is not kosher business, is not above the board, as it were. But Chinese diplomats need to communicate better and communicate differently. There needs to be more of an exchange of information between the Chinese that are in particular individual countries with the locals that are there to dispel some of these notions. Just like, I had lunch, my wife and I had lunch with the Chinese ambassador only last week on Monday, actually. And, even I was blown away by the things that the Chinese ambassador was saying. There are good Chinese and bad Chinese. But the stereotype out there is that all Chinese are bad. They come in, they break rules, they destroy the environment and that kind of stuff. And maybe also, what kind of people leave China to go and do business abroad? I don't know what kind of people these are who leave China to come and do business abroad. Are they doing so well, or they go out because they see opportunities to make a quick buck and come back, and they don't care about the environment where they are doing business? So the bottom line, Chris, to answer your question is, no, people don't know much about Chinese. They need to know more about the Chinese. Yes, China needs to communicate differently. The embassies need to do more in getting the locals to understand what China is all about. Allow me to turn, Chris, and share with you. I'm currently reading this book. I finished reading it, rather. Can you see it? Yes.
Yes, it's by Jinko. I know.
She has done a great job for me of telling the Chinese story in a manner that people understand it. I've just finished reading it, and I invited her to be a delegate at our annual Ideas Festival in Zimbabwe. And she interacted with people virtually, and people were hungry to learn. Just right now, my PA I bought a copy for somebody else who reached out to me and says, "Can you buy me this book?" And this book is now selling in Zimbabwe because I recommended this book to a lot of people, because it has made me understand the importance of culture in China, that Chinese love China, that is not every Chinese who's wanting to escape to the West and that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of Western propaganda. And by the way, Chris, I've decided that going on, I'm going to be reading books on China by Chinese, so that I don't have Western gatekeepers telling me what China is. So China needs to get more Africans, Africans, people in Latin America and so forth, to go to China and experience China, to experience Chinese media, to have an engagement with Chinese diplomats and so forth. I've made it my own personal agenda, by the way, Chris, to learn more about China, but from Chinese authors rather than from somebody else. I don't know if that answers your question.
Oh yes, yes, yes. I think it's a very important thing that you have mentioned is that people don't have sources to get to know China, and it's the same here in China. When I want to find information on Zimbabwe, I search on English language channels. I Google, I use Wikipedia, I use YouTube, I watch your content, and all those content are predominantly international global media in English. And I guess because Zimbabweans, they speak English. And when you want to know China, you go to an English language news website or information website and you
Yeah.
search for Chinese information about China. You don't go to a Chinese website telling you information on China. So, and that English language being the lingua franca of the world, I think is one of the issues because Chinese people, they are not multilingual.
No.
Only a fraction of the Chinese population, 1.4 billion people, a fraction of them can converse with people freely in English. And that's kind of problematic. I imagine I imagine a lot of encounters you have in Zimbabwe with Chinese people. You think, oh, these people, they like to stick to themselves. They don't respect local culture. They don't,
Yeah.
it's just they don't know how.
Yeah. They
They
don't
don't
know
know how
how.
to
Yeah.
appreciate the local culture. So yeah, so in the end, they come across as cold or arrogant. But Chinese people are not arrogant, generally speaking. There are some, of course, there are some. I would say, like people everywhere. The Chinese people,
Everywhere.
there are good Chinese people, bad Chinese people,
Yeah.
xenophobic Chinese people, warm Chinese people, all kinds of people. But
Absolutely.
in general, the people who go overseas, they want
Yes.
to take the risk of setting up their business abroad in another completely foreign environment are those more adventurous people and those people who are more open to the outside world. And it's generally assumed they are not, narrow-minded. They do not have a pre-made mindset about the stereotypes of a
Yeah.
group. So, but I think a lot of these unfortunate misunderstandings are due to lack of information, a lack of
Yeah.
interaction, and the lack of interaction to some extent is due to the disfamiliarity with each other's language. And the fact we are now talking to each other in English is a reflection to that fact that we cannot converse. I cannot talk to you. I don't know. Are you from Indebele?
Yes. Ndebele. Yes. Yes.
Indebele.
Yeah.
The language is a Bantu language.
It's Ndebele. It's Ndebele. The language is
Indebele.
Ndebele. So I speak
Yeah.
Ndebele. It's spoken in South Africa. It's spoken in Zimbabwe. It's a fundamental point, Chris.
Yeah.
It would be lovely if you were speaking in Chinese and I speaking in Ndebele, and we can talk. But that's going to take a long time. But that's the ideal place. I agree with you completely, Chris, on that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, not going to be a long time, I think, because, well, some technological gadgets like you wear specs and you can
Yes.
translate immediately what the other party is saying to the local language, and that is the Earth is shrinking very fast. Technology
Yeah.
has done that,
Yeah.
but I think
Absolutely.
the more basic thing is what do people need, like you have mentioned earlier, the things we need in our life, the good life that we all want to live. The good life may not necessarily be materialistic, like how much money you make. It
Yeah.
also has to do with your inner mentality, your inner peace. How do you reconcile with your social relations? You have lamented earlier about the fact that people are glued to their phones, that they are in total disregard of their social environment. The more intrinsic need is that people need to be in touch with other people. So
Yeah.
there's this need that there's a fundamental need. Technology has just created a false feeling that you are
Yeah.
connected somehow
Connected.
with those the number of likes you received, you are very popular, but in fact you're probably just a miserable miserable person in your own basement doing videos. Just we are so engrossed by the fact that technology has enabled us to better perceive, may not be better, may not be the right word, to perceive with greater precision and greater magnitudes the kind of relation we want to pursue in our life. But in fact, you could be wandering further and further away from the real interactions between people. And that's really sad. And I think as super normal people, super average person, that we probably will have to convey to our peers the more holistic approach to our lives, to connect with people. Our conversation will have to be more engaging with them. So we ourselves will need to understand their needs, basically their psychological needs when they consume information online and otherwise. And I think that's a really challenging task for us.
I think I agree with you. That's going to be the heart of the matter. How do we get, remember what I said, that is the public discerning in what kind of content that they're consuming? Do they know the difference between fake content and genuine good content? Do they know that? Do they care about that? I think our responsibility is to do our work in a humble manner that makes people care about what we do. For people to realize that without a good media, without researched information, society is at risk. So the onus is on us, but we are fighting. The headwinds are huge. Those headwinds include the corporates. Those headwinds include the public, who don't seem to have time to engage with the stuff that we're doing. But let's not blame the customer. Let's do what we're supposed to do and do it well. Chris, it's been good chatting to you. I need to run. I really have thoroughly enjoyed this. Yeah.
Me too. I enjoyed it very much. And I hope our conversation will continue in the future, because I think it's a vital channel between our two countries, China and Zimbabwe.
Yes.
We need such conversation to be going forward.
Chris, I would love to do this more often. And I would love us to bring in even more people, me, people on my side, people on your side. I would love to have us, even having physical encounters where we get people in a room and we talk about the kind of things that we're talking about. But primarily, do Chinese understand Zimbabweans? Do Zimbabweans understand Chinese? How do we get to know each other? How do we get to understand each other? We need each other. We need each other. And for us to fully embrace each other, we need to understand each other. At the moment, ignorance breeds fear. Fear then sends us, tears us apart. So we need to understand each other so that we get to know each other. And that compassion, that love and care begins to come in again. Thank you so much, Chris.
Thank you. Very beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's been
Cheers.
great. Thank you. Yeah, take care.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye, Philip.
Well, and just like that, we've reached the end of another insightful and thought-provoking edition of China Now. I hope you enjoyed the show as much as we did bringing it to you. Don't forget to share your comments, feedback, and suggestions via the email provided below. Would love to hear from you. I am Makiza Latifa, and I'll see you again, same time next week. Until then, take care.